Hello, hello, hello. We are back. Triggered AF, the podcast. You already know we are in season 6, and I don't think you understand. We are tapping into all of the highly uncomfortable conversations and parts of this life. And today we are here with Pamela Merritt, and she is a religious trauma healer. Now listen, I told y'all we tapping into all the things, right? That may make us uncomfortable. Y'all already know we are not afraid to have the uncomfortable conversations, right, Dani?
Oh, I'm ready for this, especially this one, because that title sounds real layered. That's a real layered title. So
very layered.
I'm excited to dive very deep into that.
Yes, this particular conversation is around church and trauma. For those who were raised in the church or who have chosen a different path, this conversation is going to dive super deep into what it looks like after the trauma, what you do, how you work through it, and where we go from there. All right.
So outside of all the titles like religious trauma healer and LCSW, what would you say is how you describe yourself? You know, like outside of all the accolades and the things we accomplished in life, it's so easy to get caught up in the titles.
Absolutely.
But who do you say that you are?
I say that I am an incredibly empathetic and compassionate person who loves music, who loves binging documentaries.
Ooh, yes, documentary.
Who loves conjuring up all of my maternal ancestors in the kitchen and cooking something nice.
Oh, yeah.
Conjuring.
Yeah, that's who I am. Outside of that, I'm an incredibly empathetic human being that wants the best for everybody.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I love that. I love it.
So that's the only question that we ask all of our guests, right? Because it's just, we have such prolific, interesting people.
You do.
And I'm like, every time surprised by the different answers we get. Because you would think that like maybe there's like a theme or most people say like the top 10 things, but literally everyone says something different,
Everyone
right?
says something different.
Okay, so we're here for a long time. I mean, a good time, not a long time.
That's right.
So I just want to dive in because I think that church is such a sensitive topic for so
really
many
is.
people.
It is.
It is.
And I think, yes, we're talking about church, but I think anyone that comes from religious settings, whether it's synagogues, mosques,
Any of them.
whatever your religious setting is, whenever there's a departure or whenever there's confusion or wherever there's a space that you want to explore something else, it can cause discomfort, it can cause anger, it can cause isolation from your community. There's a lot of layers. It's not just walking away. And sometimes when you're talking to someone that isn't a part of that world, they never understand what the big deal is.
They're always like, well, you just made a different decision. And it's like, it's not that easy.
And you're just walking away. So it's like, what's the big deal? And why is it so serious? And who cares? And it's like, no, when you're in that world, you're
different.
very consumed by it.
Absolutely.
So we were doing a little research and we were just like, okay, what's happening in the church world? Neither of us are regular church attendees anymore, but we both grew up in the church.
I mean, in it. I was in a borderline cult.
Oh, not as cultish as me.
Oh, trust me. We can go. We can
We
go
go toe to toe. I bet I'll beat you though.
Listen, we don't want to traumatize y'all so early in the episode.
Yeah.
But
Trigger warning.
Listen, trigger warning. My entire existence, everything was about pedophilia. My boyfriend, every time he'd get molested, I would go and have sex with him to make him feel like he was a man.
And we were told we had to wear stockings to bed as grown married women.
Yes.
Stockings to
Holiness.
bed.
Stockings. Holiness.
In my church, you had to wear skirts below your knee. You couldn't wear earrings. You couldn't wear jewelry. You couldn't wear makeup. And you weren't supposed to relax your hair either.
Ooh, we couldn't wear beads and accessories in ours. So,
None of those things.
None of that.
Things. Yeah. Oh, and no
Modest.
red nail polish.
Modest.
Oh, no red nail polish, no red lipstick.
Nothing close to red. No red.
That was for prostitutes and hookers.
Listen,
that's
yes.
for Jezebels.
And whores. Okay, yes, exactly.
Listen.
So many of us come from that church world, especially in the Black community, and we were really astounded when we were researching this topic a little bit to find out that church membership among U.S. adults is now below 50% for the first time in history.
Yeah.
In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1999. So it's like literally like a plummeting number of people. So what do you believe are some of the contributors in this massive drop in membership?
Well, I can't really speak to the masses. What I can speak to is what I encounter through therapy and theology, which is my brand,
Yeah.
what we encounter through Holy Smoke Cigars and Spirituality, the podcast, where we're deconstructing our faith and building beloved community one cigar at a time. So we come in contact, and even with our ministry, the faith community, we come in contact with so many people who leave their religious spaces with trauma. And I'm not talking about hurt, like church hurt, because there's a difference.
There's a huge
difference.
Yeah.
I would put church hurt in that category of you want to sing in the alto section, but you can't really hold your note. So the music, the minister of music tells you that you would better serve somewhere else, and you get your feelings hurt.
Right.
So it's more of an offense.
Yeah, you get offended.
Yeah.
But when it comes to trauma, we are coming in contact with people who have been gaslit when they're having real problems.
Yes.
And you have spiritual leaders and pastors and ministers who are trying to alter the reality of people who are saying they're being hurt and abused in these spaces. We are also coming into contact with people who need their human emotions addressed. And we have people in churches and ministerial positions who are using scripture to bypass the human experience of people.
You need therapy.
Absolutely.
The scripture ain't gonna do it. It's not enough.
No, it's not enough. It's not enough. You know, there's some God-given resources that we have.
Yeah.
We can go out and we can seek the help that we need, but we're coming in contact with a lot of people who have major anxiety, major depression. They are contemplating taking their lives, and our platforms and our ministry, we get people that say, if this doesn't work, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it anymore because it's been incredibly traumatizing, and I have been pushed all the way to the margins. So if this doesn't work, I'm done.
Close to the edge. And I get it. And also too, on the flip side, because I'm a firm believer in, let's look at, things from all angles. It's a gift, I would say, in that I can feel a way and still have enough empathy to look and see, well, where's the other person coming from? And so on the other side, you have those who believe that many of the mass shootings, the increase in rise in rape and violence of all kinds, that it can be attributed to the decline in a belief system and in a trust in like our religious institutions and even those practices. So do you believe that there is like a valid correlation? And if so, what is it that you believe we can do about it? Because once someone has been traumatized, a brother once offended, it's harder to be warned in a strong city. So do you believe that there A, is a correlation, and then B, what can we do about it? Because that's just facts. There has been a rise in all of the three.
And I don't know if I would attribute that as a blanket to cover the rise in this type of physical and mental violence against other bodies, especially Black and brown ones. But what I will say is that on an individual basis, talking to individuals, when they lose a sense of connection, there is a feeling of being lost. And I think that I don't know if it's necessarily attributing to it, because everybody isn't religious. Everybody doesn't believe in God. Everybody doesn't have a higher power that they feel an outside connection to. So I wouldn't necessarily put the rise in violence on a lack of connection to spirituality. What I will attribute it to is a lack of connection to ourselves and a lack of connection to our neighbors. There is a lack of introspection that we're doing with ourselves to figure out what's hurting us, what's ailing us, what traumas we have of our own. And then because we are disconnected from ourselves, we can't connect to each other. So we don't have any regard for human life. If I hurt you, you just get hurt. You need to get over it. Because it gives me a temporary feeling of being in power. It gives me a temporary feeling of being important and being seen and being heard. And for a lot of people who don't have that love, that self-love for themselves, if I can disregard me and not pay attention to me, then if I hurt you, too bad.
Yeah, I feel that way about dating too. If you don't love you, then I'm afraid to date you.
Yeah.
Because you gon' take me through the muck and the miry place. It's not gonna be good.
No, it's not gonna be good.
I mean, I feel like I don't think you can blanket it, like what you're saying. You can't say like, oh, because people are not religious anymore, that is the reason. There are so many other factors. But I think that I think it's very difficult to be connected to yourself without this, without any kind of a experience of a connection to a higher being. In a sense of like, unless you have always been taught that. But most of us, that's the kind of upbringing that we have. So it actually makes it a little bit easier for us to connect to ourselves, because it's kind of like religion does give you somewhat of a framework and a baseline. I know like it has all the other things in there that we want to just leave out, like just spit out all the bones in there. Right. But if you look at the meat part of it, it is teaching you ritual and habits and things that if you do on a daily basis can improve your life on just a baseline level. I'm not talking about all the other things, institutions that our religious have done. But I do think, like, I always tell Alicia, because she's like, very anti-religion, but I always tell her the reason why it's so easy for you to still do some of the things that you do and connect in the way that you do and tap in the way that you do is because of the baseline and the foundation that you had. Not everybody can do that. It's like, I always say, speed limits are there for people who don't have control over themselves. We wouldn't need speed limits if there weren't people that don't think about other people and reckless. So laws are really in place for people who are more tempted to break the law. But when you have the foundation of that structure, the truth is that most people need structure. And I think that sometimes we're going so far left because of the trauma, because of the hurt. But I think we're forgetting that not all of us are equipped to live with such freedom in a space where you're never taught how to do that from childhood. Like nobody teaches us that.
But I don't think you need religion. What I mean? But I do not think you need religion to be accountable.
I'm not saying that you need it. I'm saying that most people do not know how to function that way without something in place for them. It's why governments and why systems have lasted for eons, because most people just don't function that way well. I would love a world where we start teaching people to do that outside of it, but it's just not as normal, I feel like, as we try to make it seem.
And so here's my thing, right? I do not agree that you have to have religion to teach someone accountability. Your belief is that religion teaches you accountability, it teaches you habits, it teaches you all these things. The monks who were living in the jungle not even monks, because monks have a religion. But folks who lived in times where just religion was not a thing for them, they still taught their children practices. I do not feel as though you have to have religion to teach your children accountability. I feel like you can teach a human person, especially if you start young.
I don't think accountability is the only thing that you need. I'm not just talking about accountability. I'm just talking about the overall structure that most people need. It comes from religious systems. Even our whole governmental system is based on religion.
And our governmental system also said that we were 3/4 of a human and that we should not count as a full person and that I should be able to bear your children and I should bear your children and you should be able to take them. I don't necessarily agree with everything our government does.
You remember I talked to you about your exception of the rule complex? It's various ugly. What do you think?
Well, I believe that both of you are correct.
Okay.
I believe we absolutely need structure. My husband wrote about it in his book, Breaking All the Rules.
Yes.
We need structure as humans. Because,
I agree.
Structure teaches us how to respect ourselves and each other.
I agree.
I believe that you don't need religion to give structure. I believe that religious spaces give a certain type of structure. I also believe that religious spaces, it all depends on the way you're taught structure.
I agree.
My religious space absolutely gave me structure and rules, but you know what? It was incredibly toxic.
It was, and it can be very, it can make you shrink. It can make you feel smaller. Like, I agree with that. That actually is not my point. My point is not that you need religion. I'm just saying that is what it has provided for a large number of societies for eons. So that my point is just that I don't think we have yet developed or evolved past a space where we don't lean on religion enough. Where we can just say, oh, we don't need religion anymore because we figured out the structure. We're not there yet. We're still kind of in a space where we're trying to figure that out. And I think we can feel that tension of breaking away from those religious spaces that taught us structure and trying to define and find new structures outside of that. But almost every government, whether it's a Muslim country, their government is still rooted so much in their religious practices. As much as America likes to act like they have no ties to Christianity anymore, we're fighting for abortion right now because of things in the Bible, like from what a certain group of people believe about religion, about abortion based on their biblical practices. So my point is just that, not that you need religion to get structure, but I just don't think most people have evolved to in a space where they don't need that yet. And I think it needs to be more of a transition than a complete cut and change to something new.
Agreed. I believe that if you have been indoctrinated since you were a child,
right, and
what church will do in most of our, especially our Black churches, because that's always my focus, is the cultural perspective.
Yeah.
Because the way white people deconstruct and the way Black people deconstruct is completely
very different.
Because we embody our religion.
Yes. And they're different. Their experience with their religion is very different.
It's very cognitive. Yes. So it's about, learning and getting all the information and believing that all the information is certain. For Black church kids, we embody the music. We embody the feel of church. We embody...
It's like a culture.
Yeah, it is a culture. It is a culture. We embody the community that Black church gives us. Yeah. Everybody in church is auntie and uncle. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just what we do. So when people come to me for religious trauma consultations and they are transitioning, what I'm helping them with is understanding that their religious space does not determine the structure that they have to their life.
Right.
Like, you have to understand what is, if the greatest commandment is for me to love my neighbor as I love myself, which is the extension of my love for God, then that is my structure. And people think that then that means you can just do anything. But the truth of the matter is, if I am constantly evaluating, is this outside of loving my neighbor? Does this look like love? Is this loving me? Loving my neighbor as myself is very hard if I don't know how to love myself.
That
Absolutely.
part.
And most people don't know how to love themselves.
Right.
And that too, that's the biggest piece that people miss too when it comes to church. When you step away from those religious practices, and you said it earlier, it does and can lead to confusion.
And if your church is a church that is giving doctrine and instruction and theology that separates you from yourself. So if I'm telling you you're a filthy rag every Sunday, if I'm telling you that you are low and that you are weary and that every single thing you do, that you need to be present and pleasing and perfect before God, then you're going to be so codependent on what I'm giving you every Sunday and every Wednesday. And so when you do leave, you do need a crutch, because what you were in isn't connecting you to who you are. It's death dealing. It's actually separating you from who you are. So when people come to me from that type of structure, we have to completely take the whole thing apart.
Because you lose your sense of community.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting how, go ahead. I was going to say, it's just your point about telling you you're weary and telling you you're low and telling you that you need to wait on the Lord. That rhetoric is so different from Joel Osteen's TED Talks. Those are what his sermons are to me. They just sound like
motivational speeches.
Jesus TED Talks. That's just the vibe. It's like those churches to me are like a rock concert and a TED Talk about... kind of about Jesus, mostly about money, but a little bit of Jesus sprinkled in. And that rhetoric is so different. I heard somebody say that the center of the Black community is the church, but the center of the white community is the bank. Mm-hmm. And yes, they go to church, and yes, they, some of them believe in God or act like they believe in God or whatever, but their relationship, and I love that you brought that up, but their relationship to the church and what they think about church is so different. And the things that they hear from their leaders is so different from what we hear.
You know what, though? You got to think about the culture that we come from. Why would I, as a white pastor, talk to a white congregation about victory and freedom?
Ooh.
If I'm preaching about the walls of Jericho as a Black Christian sitting in church, I'm going to look at myself as the people on the inside of the walls. And white people may see that story as, we're the ones that come in and take We're outside of the walls. So depending on your culture, you hear scriptures.
Your perspective is different.
Completely
Like why do I need to preach about Pharaoh setting slaves free if I've never been enslaved? That's gonna hit me different if I'm black.
Because I'm the
slave.
Yeah.
If I'm preaching to a congregation of non-black people, they can't identify with being enslaved.
No.
So why am I gonna constantly talk about freedom to a congregation that hasn't experienced bondage?
Ooh. So that's why
it's different.
Yeah. About the bank with a little sprinkle of Jesus in there.
That's why it's different. That's why
why
we white knuckle our religion, because that saved my grandmother when she was sharecropping, when she was picking cotton. That saved her.
Yeah, those Negro spirituals got you through having to literally push a baby out and have it taken from you. You have to grab hold of something. If you no longer have your language, you no longer have your traditions,
you no longer have your
family, you got to hold on to something. So the best thing you can hold on to is this Jesus that they've told you about.
The white Jesus?
The white Jesus.
The white one.
That's the only one you know about, because that's the one who is free like you want to be.
Yeah.
That's
so hell yeah, you gonna hold on to white Jesus.
But just, do you realize how like messed up that is? Like that whole concept to me, like that's where my questioning started. I like started taking some religious. I had a traumatic experience within the church. My pastor, who was like my father, passed away, and it just shook up my whole world, because I think like maybe a month before, some apostle of the Lord came and said that and spoke all this prophecy over his life. And I just was so like, he died. He was very young. He was 33 years old.
Oh, wow.
He died in a car accident. So it wasn't like it was like a sudden death for us. And he was very young, but he was the patriarch of our family. Like I said, he was like my father. He was for sure my spiritual father. And when he died, I just had so many more questions than I had answers. And I decided that I needed to this is not adding up to me anymore. Like something is not making sense. Like, how are you prophesying as this person, but you ain't see that? Like y'all didn't see like how psychics don't see the lotto numbers? Like y'all didn't see this happening, So it really shook me to my core and completely set me on a trajectory of trying to figure this out. And one of the things I did was take a religious studies classes actually in college. And I just, they were talking about how the slaves got introduced to Christianity and blah, 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 one theory of it anyways. And I just started thinking like, how come no one ever questioned that Jesus was white? And why didn't his whiteness bother us?
You know
what I mean? Like, he looks like your master. Like, why is
Stockholm syndrome?
I know, but it was just like, what my point is that I just don't understand why it's not questioned more. Like, now I hear it, but growing up, that was never, the white Jesus was on the windows, the white Jesus was in the Bible. Like, it was never even like a second thought that he was white.
Even though his hair is like wool.
But you know what? When you,
confusion.
If somebody comes to your land, somebody that you don't know, somebody that you've never seen, and they have all of these weapons, and they come and kidnap you, and they demonize everything that you do, and they tell you that this is devilish, this is evil, this is demonic, and whiteness is placed on a pedestal for everything that's right. If you are getting beat every day, if you are out in the sun every day, if your children are getting taken from you every day, if you're getting separated from your husband on a regular basis, and somebody is telling you repeatedly that this is the man that can save you, and I am at a point of despair, I'm not questioning anything, nothing. I'm not going to question anything, because what you have also done is you've manipulated me by using a peer. So you'll find a black man in the midst of all of us, teach him how to read, but only certain parts of the Bible. The parts that keep me subservient. Yes, the parts that keep me subservient. So now you're not telling me about white Jesus. You found somebody that I trust,
which is still happening
to tell me.
Everyone. I just hope you know that.
Okay. Yeah, you found someone in my community that I trust that looks like me to also reinforce that this is who's going to save me from this.
From you. So this who gonna save me from you.
And this is also my duty.
And he looks like you.
Yes. And in the same breath, you also tell me to obey your master. For me, and I get it. And this isn't don't be religious episode, this isn't it. I actually do believe that religion is something that is beautiful when done right.
Absolutely.
I do believe
at its
that
core, I think it's a beautiful thing. Just like marriage or other institutions.
Yeah.
It's just, you get people and they fuck it up.
there are difficulties. Yeah, you get humans.
Oh my God, am I supposed to curse on this episode because we're talking about religion?
Girl,
How does that work?
bye.
It's like we gonna have some church talk. They was like, oh my God, I thought I could listen to him without hearing a curse word. Not today.
Not today, sis. But no, so my thing is like I said, I do believe that religion has its place, and for many people, they do need it. So we are in agreement with that. I just do not agree that you have to have religion in order to teach people accountability.
No, I don't think so either. I just think that most people, that's just how they operate. That's just the paradigm we've been living in for centuries. Where religion is.
Well, I'm breaking that
teaches us
paradigm because it's a no for me.
Well, you know, I feel like we're talking a lot of, like, everything isn't all good and everything isn't all bad.
Yeah.
What do we think? What has the church done? What are the benefits? How has the church helped us? Other than helping us through slavery, what are some of the things that it has? What are some of the benefits and some of the great things that the church has done for the Black community? Because, like I said, everything isn't all good and everything isn't all bad. And I always want to give credit where it's due. I never just want to bash anything. So what do you feel like are some of the things that the church has given us that we can keep?
Community.
Yeah,
community. That is one of the biggest things that we have been able to design and curate from church. Culture is another one. Because when you think about all of the African traditional religion that we brought, and then we had to figure out how to hide it underneath and in between white Jesus, which is the reason why Black church feels different from white church. Because it has all of our stuff that we brought.
The same way they hide Satanism under white Jesus. Go ahead.
Yeah, we brought all of our practices and all of our rituals with us, and a lot of the stuff that we do is still in that. And so there is a lot of cultural nuance that we get our music from there. Yeah. We get our food, we get our community, we get, it was a place of solace.
Yeah, it's toxic love sometimes. Yeah. But that energy, there's an underlying energy.
I mean, it was really the only place that slaves were allowed to gather.
And safe place. So the church was also the church was also the club after Sunday service was over. The church was also the safe space that we ran to if something happened in our community. We're going to gather here. We're going to talk about what to do. So there is a lot of safety in church. There is a lot of community in church. There's a lot of unity in church. It's just that a lot of times when it is presented to us the same way it was given, it can be so harmful. Yeah. It can be so harmful.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when you have people like the people that you're talking about that back in the day, there were what we would probably call today house slaves, but there were slaves that would get extra perks and privileges based on what they were willing to do to manipulate their fellow slaves. And they would have deals with their white master to have better clothes, better shoes, better being allowed to read, a better
survival.
Better food, all the things. And I think sometimes we just think that has ended. And I think one of the greatest disservices to church and what has happened is we've had so many house slaves rise in power and take over the narrative of what church is and realize how easy it was to manipulate people who weren't educated and who were needy and who were desperate and who needed some kind of hope. And they started selling hope to people without giving them any way to detach from them to have it. And that for me is where the destruction comes in, is seeing people taken. I grew up in a church family. We owned a church. So I saw our transition from starting church in the living room to going into a building and then seeing my pastor change when he started getting around other pastors like, what are you doing? Why are you giving this away for free? What you mean? My pastor didn't collect tithe and offering. He had the offering and he had the offering in the back just like
for when you walk
way back
out,
church.
Give,
it was like you walk and you just give. We never had offering time, offering collection.
Okay.
And one day a visiting minister came to our church, and he was flabbergasted that we did not do offering time and sing a little song and pass around a collection plate because he was just like, how are y'all making money off these people? Like, what are y'all doing? This is stupid.
Because that was the point.
Because it's just like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, that's the point of gathering.
And
for
he
a lot
was
of
just
people.
and we were just like, huh? Like, we had church every Sunday. We fed everybody. And the offering was in the back. You gave it if you gave it. And then after a while, people started coming in and just having so much of an opinion about how we were doing things that you have no choice but to shift. Even when you come in with a pure heart. I think that's a lot about a lot of celebrities and musicians. I think everybody comes in wanting to just help everybody and give a good message and do their art. And then you just end up in a world that is just so toxic and ugly and is just trying to feed off people. It literally sucks the energy out of the members so that they can live the life that they want to live at everybody else's expense.
Yeah, like with Creflo Dollar, how he said his parishioners are supposed to buy him a jet. And then he came back later and was like, that was flesh. Duh. Like, the fuck? Did you just realize? Like, did you just come into the awareness that was your flesh?
It's just, they just started taking advantage of their fellow brethren the same way our masses take advantage of us.
Yeah, same shit, different day.
I think what happens is if you take people who are marginalized and you give them a position like the black man was given as a preacher.
Yes.
And that is all that he has. And he's the only one that can read. And he's the only one that preaches.
That's power.
There is no space where he is seen as a person outside of that church.
Exactly.
And just the way we have passed a lot of things on from generation to generation, there's a mindset that comes with that, where ego comes before people.
Oh, I just said this the other day. Yeah. I just said how much I hate hobnobbing and like the things that people need. Like, I dislike, and I can't say it exactly because I have to do it, so I have to be careful with my words, since I'm in this world now. But I dislike formalities. I dislike you need to sit here in the front. Mm-hmm. You need to have this thing, and it needs to be shown that you are this man of God, or you're this politician, or you're this person. Yes. Like, I just dislike, it just seems so anti-Jesus to me. Like, I just, like, that is not.
Because his homies was the hoes and the hookers.
Yeah,
it can get really self-centered.
Yes.
And I think it gets out of control like that when your leadership's identity is wrapped up in being the leader of the church.
Exactly.
A lot of people in leadership don't know who they are outside of being the leader of something. Yeah. So when people start to do something different other than sit in front of them and listen to them all day, it's like, what are y'all doing? Where are y'all going? Yeah. And it's not really about the people. It's about what this means to me, that everybody is now thinking something different. If you decide not to come here and listen to me, what does that say about me? Yeah. If you decide not to pay your tithes here, what does that say about me? If I don't have a mega church with all the people in the city, what does that say about me?
Right. Have you ever helped pastors with that? Like with their own trauma? Have you ever dealt with pastors or leaders in church?
I just had a conversation with the American Baptist College in Nashville, Tennessee at the top of last week. And it was a bunch of pastors and a bunch of leaders. And I talked to them about what trauma looks like and how it's perpetuated from the pulpit. Okay. Because a lot of times it went over well. No, it actually went over well.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it went over well. I think I told them a lot of times, when you think about the story of Moses and Pharaoh, and Moses asking Pharaoh, to free the enslaved people. And a lot of leaders see themselves as Moses, the person that gets the word, the person that frees people. But then we need to take a look at ourselves and evaluate whether or not we're being Pharaoh. Are we the people that are holding people hostage? Are we the people that are doing the damage? Are we the people that are abusing people? Because we all like to see ourselves as the victor. Sometimes we're not, though. We're the oppressor.
Sometimes you're the villainous.
Yes.
You are a villainous victim.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy too, because it's kind of like how you tell people in the professional world, don't make your title your world.
Right.
And I never even thought of it or put it in the context when it came to church, that if you make being a preacher your only, that's it. Mm-hmm. You can't help but become an egomaniac eventually, because it becomes all consuming.
It's like any other profession that you think about. If all you've done is modeled your whole life. Yeah. And then here comes a different way to model, and you're no longer getting all of the attention. Yeah. If you are used to somebody who's going out to door and selling and doing marketing and pitching, and now you got Instagram influencers who can do it online, to more people and get brand deals, you might get upset about that.
Yeah, kind of like when sports players, when they leave the NFL or the NBA or
and they don't know what
MLB,
else to do,
they get so depressed, or they'll spend all their money because it's literally the same thing. So I completely understand, especially now because we're entering this like age of enlightenment. Okay?
Absolutely.
And so it's bolstered our confidence a little bit. I think I might be one of them, to make like our own connections to the divine. Because I know for a lot of how I grew up is if you give this amount of money, you'll be protected, you'll be whatever. Who cares that you're going to be homeless after you give these $10,000?
And your lights going to be out.
Your lights are going to be off. But you'll be good because you gave this amount of money, right? And so for folks who are trying to figure out what that transition looks like so that it can be something that's smooth and they still want to have a connection to God, because I still believe in God. I still believe in God. I still believe in Jesus. I just don't do religion. But what are some of the ways in which you equip people to nourish that relationship still with the divine outside of the church? Because that can be confusing for folks.
I spend a lot of time with people when I first meet them, helping them to reconnect to themselves. Because traumatized people aren't connected to themselves.
Absolutely not.
No.
So before we can get into what their reimagining of the divine is, we have to get them reconnected to themselves. Because I have people that show up for sessions with me, for consultations with me, who can't identify feelings, who don't know what anger feels like, can't name it, who don't know what sadness feels like, can't name it, because in church, that wasn't allowed. That wasn't a happy feeling. So being angry, being resentful, being jealous, those things weren't allowed. So if you spend 20, 30, 40, 50 years suppressing human emotion, and then all of a sudden you come out of that and you're allowed to feel it, you might not even be able to tap into it. So I spend a significant amount of time just helping people reconnect to themselves, helping people have language for what they feel.
By doing what? Can you give us like an example?
Sure.
That you would do?
Let me think of, there's been an experience where I have a client that I talked to about their trauma in the church, and she had a partner who she was going to church with, and they got outed by somebody in the church, and she was so angry about it. But instead of sitting with that anger and understanding that she felt anger, she felt guilt. Because it was like, I'm not supposed to have this same gender loving relationship. Somebody outed me. That's what I get because I shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Right. And when we sat down and we unpacked it, what was underneath that feeling of guilt was anger. She was angry that she was made to feel bad about this being in love with the person that she loved. So guilt sat on the top. Shame sat on the top. But when we started unpacking how that scenario played itself out in front of everybody, she was furious, but she had no idea of the fury because that wasn't something she was allowed to feel. So it was like, every time I feel this anger, it's uncomfortable. So I push it down because that's not righteous. That's not holy. That's not godly. So just being able to say to her, what did that feel like to you? Sometimes I know this may sound really elementary, but sometimes I'll use feeling charts with my clients in their 40s and 50s
to reconnect
because they don't know what misery feels like. They don't know what shame feels like.
Identify
they don't know how to identify it. And so they may use words like, I felt bad, or I felt blue, or I felt down, but they don't have the language for what that emotion actually is. So before we can get to anything that is outside of them, we have to figure out how to get them to reconnect to them. And once you understand who you are and what your needs are and what your beliefs are, you reimagine your connection with the divine in a different way. Because if you see yourself as dirty and filthy and unworthy, the way you connect is going to look different. We know when we feel bad, our interaction with people is not the same. When we feel confident and we feel affirmed and we feel good about what we do and who we are, we go out into the world with boldness. And we go out into the world with a certain level of confidence. So there's so much self-work that has to be done before we can do that, because usually the connection that they have is jaded. It's usually a relationship of oppressor and victim, or villain and victim. And that's not the relationship they want with God.
Right.
But they have that relationship with the divine because of the way they've been taught to see
that's
themselves.
how it was introduced to us. Like that's how else was it going to function in the way that we needed it to function if it wasn't oppressor and slave? Like that is the I feel like the river that flows through religion is that feeling of just like, I'm this lowly person. I have to be afraid of this God that is going to smite me down at any moment. Like, I remember when I first started having sex, and it was not in marriage, child. And when I first started having sex, I would get this immense feeling of fear and guilt after, because like I was just like a sinning whore. Like, in my mind, I was just like,
I was gonna get you,
and I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to hell. And then I would do it again, and then it was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to like the hell beneath the hell.
I'm gonna go to the basement of hell
with gasoline panties on, and I just remember it took, and I still think it's something I worked through. Of feelings of shame and guilt around sex. You know, I now that I'm married, I think this is the most ease I have felt in my mind after sex, because for so many years I was having sex outside of marriage, which is this huge sin. And according to lots of religions, but especially the religion I grew up in, and it just took such a long time to feel connected with my body, to enjoy it, really. Right. It was like, I would do it and I liked it and I would enjoy it, but I just mean like the kind of pleasure you can experience when you are fully connected to your body. And when you're done, it's like when you're done, it's like, okay, like that was okay, and I'm okay, and I can move on, as opposed to like, I know so many women and so many men even who grew up in that space, and they just felt so horrible. Absolutely. And it created this. And then what happens is when they do transition into marriage, they don't know how to shake that.
No.
So you're now married. Now you're doing it legally, and you still have those feelings. I feel like that's what happens with everything else. It's like everything that you start to do is like, you don't even know how to really function outside of that world, because that's just what you know. And that it's like, it's indoctrination, but it's also conditioning. And when you're being conditioned in that lifestyle, it's like, it is how you are. It's literally how your personality goes.
That's what indoctrination is. It's conditioning. It's conditioning. I remember a friend of mine, when you know, we grew up in the same church, and all we heard was no when it came to sex. No talk about it, no talk about bodies and changes our bodies go through. It's just no. Everything is no. And I remember, you know, at this time, I wasn't thinking about it, but when she called me when she got back from her honeymoon, she talked about how hard it was and how scared she was and how horrible the beginning of her honeymoon was. And I thought to myself, while I was riding in the car talking to her, I was thinking, man, we've been told no for 20 something years. You had a 30-minute ceremony and then it was no holds barred. What do you do with that?
Where do you go? Where do you start
with that?
As opposed to no, but here's some information.
Right.
No, and here's like, you talked about that from that episode of Bridgerton, when the girl gets married. It's like the first season you were talking about how she gets married, and she didn't even know.
No clue.
No clue. And it's just like,
she had never even looked at her vagina like,
as what it is. It's something that could even like have pleasure. But for me, it's like, when you think about the fact that you're saying you get told no a lot. And it's not just for sex, it's for, I mean, we can go to the movies.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many things.
You listen to the radio.
And the why was all music. Yeah, and the why was always so like, okay, like, oh, because you're going to go to hell. Oh, because it's a sin. But it was like, if someone would have said to me, hey, you're a young woman, you need to really know where your power is at. And a lot of your power lies in between your legs. And you need to value your body so much that it takes a man
give it to anybody.
This, and this. And like, if someone would have just empowered me.
If you would have told me like that, I probably honestly would have stayed not a virgin. I'm lying. But I probably would have waited. I would have waited until I at least loved the person that I slept with. And even liked a whole lot. I didn't even like the man. I was just like, you know what? Y'all think I'm hoeing anyway. Let me just go start having sex.
I don't even know if it's the love. I don't even think I would have waited for love. I think I would have just waited till I understood my body more. I think I wish someone encouraged masturbation. I wish someone would have encouraged like conversation with older women to just kind of tell me what's up. To be real. Like none of the women in my family, it's like they didn't have, like their babies were brought in by the stork. Like they didn't have sex. They all were Mother Mary child.
And they didn't know what to say because nobody told them.
Nobody told them. They didn't even like sex either. You have to understand a lot of, and this isn't a men cheat because women are bad. This ain't what I'm saying. And also, A lot.
However, comma.
Listen, a lot of men will cheat on their wives with women who are freer around sex because their wives have such a dislike for it, and they're doing it only when they're trying to have babies.
But you know what? I had an older woman in my family tell me that many of the women that she grew up with, they did not consent to their first time having sex. So many of the times they did not, and this is outside of marriage. She's just like, if you line up 10 women born in 1950, especially if they're from an island, but in the Black community, you line 10 of them up, 7 or 8 of them were molested, were raped. Like she was just like
family members.
So she's like, our introduction was not something pleasant that I want to, like, I just want to keep you from that. I want to like protect you from that. So it's just like, it's not that I was just trying to like be it like completely keep you misinformed, but it's just like I felt like this is how it protect you, was just like keeping you from it because my experience was not not a pleasant one. And she said that's most, and the other women, where it was a lot of older women, they were like, absolutely, I was molested, I was like, they all of them.
Everybody has a sexual trauma,
has a lot of sexual trauma around it. So and then couple that with the religious trauma that comes with the shame that they must feel now that they go to church and now that they've been raped and they can't talk to nobody, and now they're the person that did something wrong, even though they like.
It's
what?
Like
it gets so layered.
You don't get taught about your body until your body gets misused, and then you get taught that it's your fault that your body got misused.
Yeah, because you shouldn't be that fine anyway.
Because you shouldn't be fast.
You're just a fast little
you're just
thing.
being fast.
Listen, this conversation was so good. I don't even want to end it, but oh my God. It's so good. But I want to know, where can folks like find you, connect with you to start that healing? Because you don't want to have as many compounded traumas as we just discussed. And it can be tough to start, and you feel bad about questioning. So how can folks stay connected, find you, all the things?
Sure. I am, I have a support group on Facebook called Therapy and Theology.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of people that come to me through Holy Smokes, Cigars, and Spirituality. That's the podcast that my husband hosts with several other cast members, including myself. So you can find Therapy and Theology as a Facebook group if you're looking for some type of support while you are deconstructing or reconstructing or reimagining. We do a lot of questions. We do lives. I am getting ready to start holding some virtual meetings where we talk about different topics like spiritual bypassing and manipulation and gaslighting and recipes for shame and guilt and stuff like that. So I'm going to be talking about that. Holy Smokes, Cigars, and Spirituality is the podcast. You can find that at holysmokesmovement.com. And you can also get connected with the ministry that we are connected to, which is thefaithcommunity.org. Yeah, you can find us there. We're constantly working with people who are trying to reimagine their faith and get out from under harmful theology, move away from the rule-keeping structure of our vice lists that we all grew up with in church, and just feel a little bit more liberated and a little bit more free. You know, because that's what I honestly believe that's what God intended.
I really love that you just said that. I know I need to shut up, I promise something, but this topic is like my favorite. I'm so happy you said that, because one of the things I wanted to just make sure that we talked about was just finding a sense of community as you're transitioning, because that is one of the benefits of church, like you said, is having that community. And when you are isolated and shut out from that community because you have questions, because you're not really allowed to ask questions. So when you don't have somewhere to belong, it can be very, very, very uncomfortable for you, and it can feel traumatic in itself. So I love that. Like, please find community, please connect with her or find other communities. I was watching a documentary on Hasidic Jews that leave their community, and they have like AA for Jewish people that are leaving that community.
Yes, I saw that.
And I was like, we need this for Black. We need this for Christian people leaving the community. Like, why don't we have these meetings? So anyways, please find that community. Please find community as you're transitioning to help you along. You can stay connected with me at the Dani Bordeaux. Bordeaux is BOURDEAU. You can stay connected with Triggered AF at triggeredafpodcast.com, at triggeredafpc on Instagram. And please start going to triggeredafevents.com. We have events coming up, honey. We are coming to a city near you. We're doing virtual events as well. So please go there and stay connected with us so that you can stay up to date.
And you can always find me all over Beyonce's internet at Alicia Reese, Alechia, Reese, Reese, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.